Bayou Time Sports is brought to you by Terrible General Health System's Community Sports Institute in conjunction with Barker Honda.
All right, welcome back. We're talking Saints now with Mike Detillier, and a lot to talk about because you've been hearing everybody speculating about Sean Payton and this and that. Well, that's fun. Look, the guy gave us great years in New Orleans. Wish Sean Payton good luck. We've got to talk about the Saints. What's going to happen with the Saints? So, what's the rumblings you hear?
I'd be shocked if it wasn't Dennis Allen. Okay, and you got to go through the process now. And the NFL, their deal on that Rooney Rule, hey, listen, you got to bring in minority candidates to talk to. And I think even if you don't get the job, it gives you an opportunity to interview. And if you don't get this one, you could get another one. I know Jim Haslett, he would always tell me, first 2 interviews I did was so bad, but I got it down the third one. The third one was the one. And so, yes, they're going to talk to Aaron Glenn, who was formerly on this staff, and he's going to be a head coach one day. He's with the Lions now, defensive coordinator. They want to talk to Leftwich, Byron Leftwich, who is offensive coordinator, quarterback coach with the Bucs, but I think he's going to end up in Jacksonville as their head coach. And Brian Fleury's interesting story with Brian. Brian was at our Louisiana line camp for 3 years. He was with the Patriots. And it was with the Dolphins the last 2 years, got fired, power struggle, and you lose when it's you and the general manager. The head coach, you ain't winning that unless you're winning big. And so they'll interview those guys. But I'd be shocked if it wasn't Dennis. Dennis knows the apparatus here, how it breaks down, who to talk to, who makes the decisions, the process defensively. He set in 2016 is still in place. And how they winning today. They're winning on defense and special teams.
And you mentioned the system. So if they keep Dennis Allen and they keep Pete Carmichael and they keep the assistants, then we also talk about the assistants. They don't have to come in one day and go, all right, so-and-so's coming from another team. We're going to have a whole nother system. If it ain't broken, don't fix it. And with all the injuries they had this year, they still had a winning season, so it's really not broken, is it?
No, and I think with Sean, it was the wear down of 16 years. And then you relocated before the season started, 4 weeks. Okay, you got to go practice somewhere else. Everything's different. Second straight year, you got to deal with COVID issues. You get all the injuries, the Michael Thomas situation. But most importantly, Martin, no number 9.
Right.
You know, because you could always sort of lean on him. He would take a little bit of pressure off you. He took over, so to speak, when he had to. You didn't have that. And so that's going to be Dennis Allen, who I think will be the new head coach. His biggest issue, you better solve that quarterback situation and fast. Because if not, you back at this 9-8 type record each and every year. Look at who's playing in these games. They're the best of the best at quarterback. Best of the best.
Yeah, and I mean, but is there a Joe Burrow coming
Not
up?
in this draft class.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. So, I mean, it seems like they come in waves, you know. I remember we could go back to the Marino days in that class that came out that year, but it's just – and plus, you don't know if you're going to get them.
So you're going to have to trade for one, and it's going to be costly. But are you willing to do that? Man, I would. You know, if it costs me just draft choices and it doesn't cost me players, and I'm willing to give you up the unknown for something I know can work.
Right.
So if it's a Russell Wilson type player or Derek Carr with the Raiders, no, or even Jimmy G, because they drafted a young kid last year. They moved all around the draft board to move up to get Trey Lance from North Dakota State. Jimmy knows the tick-tock of a clock is hitting in his head. He's out of there.
But when we're talking about that, because of the fact that you lose a strong play caller in Sean Payton, does a seasoned quarterback who may be looking to move and would have thought of the Saints not go there because Payton's gone?
I think he would go where I think he feels the most comfortable. Okay, and he has seen what Pete Carmichael has done with quarterbacks. And I was telling you this off the air, he sort of was the buffer. Because, Drew, he's sort of strong-willed, and now Sean is.
Right.
And Pete's this guy, he looks like he's waiting for the bus to take him to the beach every day. I mean, he's got the same demeanor,
Right.
no matter what. He doesn't talk much, but he sort of calmed everybody's nerves. And I heard this years ago. Hank Stram told me this. He always called me by. He said, "Bayou, you always got to have somebody that can blow the candle out." And that's what Pete Carmichael did. If the flame got too hot, blow the candle out and calm both nerves.
Right.
And I think Pete's terrific for a young quarterback to develop, but also for an older one to say, "Hey, look, what's best for you? What's best for you in this particular system?" Because Curtis Johnson's not going anywhere. Curtis
Right.
is, he's from St. Charles. He's not going anywhere in that spot. And I think it's an advantageous spot if you got a healthy Michael Thomas back on the field and Kamara.
I guess we'll go back to Sean Payton, and I hear people all week going, "Boy, I'll be so mad at him if he goes to Dallas." And I'm going, y'all, the guy gave us 16 years. Can y'all name me a coach that's been anywhere for that long? I remember the days when we were shuffling coaches like underwear in New Orleans. I mean, come on, a guy gave you 16, but when you look at that, will you ever have somebody that's successful? And I know the thought is he would go to Dallas, but that's a time bomb waiting to go off over there.
I think Sean is smart enough to know one thing. He's always had carte blanche here. Personnel decisions, he's sort of been the final say. I know Mickey has that final say, but come on, Sean is
They
the
in the room
football guy.
together. Yeah.
They're all together. And Sean can be persuasive about certain things. To go somewhere where you just the head coach, because if you go to Dallas, Jerry wants that limelight. He wants the spotlight on him. He wants final say. It's a different world than working for Tom Benson and Gail Benson, who basically gave you that. I think if he comes back, Martin, he'll go to a spot where that owner is not going to be meddlesome with him. He's going to have the final say. That's not going to happen in Dallas with Jerry. Now, I can't say if Jerry would walk away and his son Steven, who's a different guy, would take over. That might be different. But I'm just telling you, Sean's used to having things his way.
But Jerry's used to having things his way, and that's impossible.
And now at 80-something years old, you ain't changing.
Jerry ain't walking out. He ain't walking out. He's going to
Well,
find
they're
that
going to
camera.
cart him out.
Yeah, he's going to find that camera somewhere. But but let's talk about Sean Payton in the booth. I think Sean Payton would be a pretty dynamic analyst. Of course, we all know you don't just step in and become perfect. Y'all interviewed John Madden several times, and it took a guy like Pat Summerall to come in and make it all right.
Yeah, and John said, my first couple years, they were swinging me to different people, so I never got a rhythm. But he said, first things first, when I was the head coach of the Raiders, I never had a TV show, never had a radio show. I didn't know nothing about this. It was Terry O'Neill, who at one time was the vice president of the Saints, but he was head of CBS Sports. He said, I think you do real good at this. He said, you got to be crazy. He said, no, come in and do the interview. So they did the interview, and they hired him, but they put him with a lot of different people. Year 3, they gave him Pat Summerall. And Pat did this forever. And it worked beautiful together because they're the soundtrack of our lives of listening to NFL football. If you listen to it in the 80s, 90s, early 2000s, it's Summerall Madden.
Right.
And how well they work together. I heard Jim Nantz say that past week that, he's been working with Romo a few years. The game between Buffalo and Kansas City was the best game they ever did. That they had worked all those games. Wasn't necessarily the game, but how they worked together. Right. And we know, being in this business, you can go to school, but that doesn't teach you how to do it. You got to be in front of the camera, and it's the chemistry that you have with someone else to let them tell their story, but you know when to shut up.
Right. And those guys, and look, I think Troy Aikman became a good one, but there's never, in my opinion, we're talking about Pat Summerall and John Madden on the regular one, But when you go to Monday Night Football and you had Cosell and Dandy Don and Frank Gifford, I don't know how they were off the camera, but on the camera, they were picking on each other and cutting up and having fun, and it was a Monday night party is what it was.
And they made it must-watch TV, despite the fact all three, I mean, you talk about totally different personalities. It was totally different between the three of them, and it made it work. So for Sean to make this work, and he told this to Dan Patrick, if I'm getting into it, I'm not getting into it with just a couple toes. It's both feet. And Pat made the comment back to him, well, then you're not just staying 1 year. Because it takes more than that to get it down. And I think he understands that it's not going to be maybe as easy as he might think it is. We saw Drew struggle this year at times. Right. I think he was good in the pregame stuff, but when he was calling games, it was different for him. Now, here's the difference between Drew and Sean. The hardest thing for a former player or coach is to be critical of another player or another coach or referees. Sean ain't got that issue. He don't bite his tongue for nobody. Right. So he's going to be straightforward with it. And I think in a format similar to how the Mannings work, if I've got him on Amazon, that's how I would put him. Now, in the booth, he's got to call the game as the game. And I think he'll do good that because he understands what that quarterback and that coach is wanting to do and the defenses he sees.
But you know as well as I do that Drew Brees is such a perfectionist that he probably has everything lined out and all that. When me and you come sit and do this show, we don't have a note. You just got to let it go sometimes.
And sometimes you can micromanage that, you know. And a lot of people ask me, oh, you and Bobby, how much y'all prep for that? Prep? He comes in at 5 minutes to 4 for a 4 o'clock show. We ain't prepping for nothing. There's no notes.
It's called being real. Being real.
We know it before we walk into the studio.
Let's go back to the Saints. Let's talk about Sean Payton because he did it a year without Drew Brees. He almost had to do it a year without Brees. But now he's looking at the real picture, no Brees, and not sure what he's going to have coming up. Yeah, you know, like a boxer. You got to know when to get out before your record starts going down. So how does Gail Benson in the management keep the fan base there? How do they get them excited again when Brees is gone and Peyton's gone?
Then you better go out and get your quarterback. Because I think nothing excites a fan base more than having that guy. Because it gives you a fighting chance every year. You might not win it. You know, Aaron Rodgers has only won 1 Super Bowl.
Right.
Drew Brees won 1. But it gives you that fighting chance each year. The thing with the Saints is they have used all these early draft choices for years now on defense is to keep that unit intact as much as you can. The rebuild is more on offense, on what you want to do there, and also the good health of Michael Thomas. Bobby and I argue about this all the time, about this next man up stuff. I said, well, tell me who the next man is. Then I can tell you if your argument is relevant. That's great for a locker room. Next man up, okay? But in reality,
who is it?
And the reality is that's really not real. Got to get Michael Thomas healthy and then have that dynamic of Thomas and Kamara. And whatever issues Mike might have had with Coach Payton, that first phone call, if I'm Dennis Allen, it's to Michael Thomas. You and I need to sit and talk. We need to work this out. What is your health like? We got to get you healthy. You're more valuable to me than you are to any other team. I got to keep you, and I can't trade you. You got no trade value because you've only played a handful of games in 2 years. And if I trade you, I take a $22 million salary cap hit. I ain't doing that.
Right.
Not this team. So it's figuring out that part of the game, the pitch and catch part of the game. But quarterback, if you can get the jumper cable guy, you got it. And it excites the fan base.
Well, we went so many years without. Well, we had good quarterbacks, but we didn't have that great one to get us there. But when you look back at Brees, I really think he should have had 3 Super Bowls.
2011, to me, was the best team they ever had.
It was.
That offense was unbelievable. And I thought about that watching Kansas City Buffalo. One of the best games I ever watched. I was certainly disappointed at the end. Saints go to San Francisco and play them, and the lead changed 4 times in 4 minutes, 32 seconds.
We had 6 turnovers.
And 6 turnovers, and you had a shot at the end.
Right.
A little bit of arrogance by Greg Williams that I'm going to show you what I'm going to do defensively. I'm going to make a big play. And Alex Smith, I give him credit. He played the game of his life. 2011. The no call thing, I still, I don't know how you get away with that at this point. But you get to the Super Bowl, you play in the Patriots, and they were a beat-up football team that year. They really stumbled into it. You'd have had a shot. But, it is what it is. The reality is you only went to 1. And I think Sean always says it, hey, guys, that's always going to be on my tombstone. Should have went to 2 more. 1-1, but should have went to 2 more.
If it's Dennis Allen and he comes up, he's had a shot before. What has he learned?
Well, the thing about it is he's in a lengthy list of former Raider head coaches, either in Oakland or Las Vegas. Lane Kiffin told me this a few years back. Man, why everybody makes a big thing about I was a fired coach with the Raiders? They got about 15 guys like me walking around. And Lane's this really successful college coach.
Right.
But the thing Dennis has to understand is he got to be himself. He can't be Sean Payton. There's only one. And Sean evolved. Deuce tells the story about year 1. He said, Mike, I almost got in a fight with him. Not once, but twice. He's in my face. I'm an established player. I'm a Pro Bowler. I led the league in rushing. Best all-purpose player in the NFC. And he's all over me. And I told him, who are you? You never been a head coach in your life. And he said, listen, we came about this close to getting into it. See that guy at the end dancing in the locker room, doing the choke sign to Devontae Freeman. In essence, he evolved, and I think that was his greatest trait, Martin, that he was not the hard-edged coach in year 1 and 2 as he was, say, in 17, 18, 19, 20, because the players are different today. He knew he couldn't talk to them the same.
Right.
He evolved as a coach.
He learned how to push the button, and he learned when he could push the button.
Exactly. And Dennis cannot be Sean. He can only be Dennis Allen. And he's going to evolve as a coach. But you know what you're getting now. He's sort of a soft-spoken guy. Doesn't really lift his voice up a lot. Ryan Nielsen can do that enough for the whole entire staff. Ryan's the hollerer of the group. But I think Dennis now is walking into some big moccasins. And he's going to feel the pressure of following Sean Payton.
Well,
because that's who he's going to be compared to.
They better get a quarterback.
They've got to get a quarterback.
Yeah, no doubt. Mike, thank you so
much.
Thank you,
Martin. Appreciate it,
your
bud.
insight all the time. Mike Detillier, once again, bringing his knowledge to us here at HTV. We appreciate that. And we'll see how it all pans out and how it all plays out. But definitely some interesting times in New Orleans. We're going to see what takes place. And it'd be curious to see who they latch on to, how they get things done. They've had a pretty good history of making the right moves, so we'll just sit back and watch as it takes place. All right, we'll see you on another episode of Bayou Time Sports. Take care.